think I finally did it. This is what I'm calling my endgame mini ITX build. Well, at least for the next 2 years. You already know this is my favorite case. This is the Fractal Terra in the Jade colorway. I think it might be one of the most unique case finishes on the market right now. When it first launched, it made a big splash in the mini ITX world. It was a clean, modern take on small form factor builds. This was actually my first ever ITX build, and after that, I just couldn't go back to regular sized towers. There's something really satisfying about opening the side panels and showing off the hardware inside. And this time around, I packed in some serious power. Let's do a specs breakdown. For this build, I wanted performance without sacrificing the compact form. So at the center of everything is the RTX 5090 Founders Edition. It's the 2-slot version, and that design is exactly why this whole build is even possible. Pairing with that, I chose the Ryzen 7800X 3D. For storage, I went with 2TB of Samsung 980 Pro. Memory-wise, I went with 32GB of DDR5 RAM. And to power it all up, I used 1100 watts of this SFX power supply. The motherboard of choice is the Gigabyte Aorus B650i. For cooling, I originally used the Noctua NHL12 Ghost Edition simply because I had this already. But then after some real world testing, I realized it wasn't handling thermals the way I'd hoped. So I decided to swap it out for the Noctua NHL12S. And that made a huge difference. I'll break that down more in a bit. Now let's talk about the build process. Building in the Fractal Terra was honestly a really smooth experience. Once I removed the 3 panels, I had full access to everything I needed. No weird angles, no tight corners, just a smart, well thought out layout. I started with the power supply. Before mounting it, I connected all the cables I need. This is a must, or else it'd be really difficult to connect anything once it's in place. Next up was the motherboard. Before I installed it, I made sure to install the CPU power cable. That cable is nearly impossible to reach once the motherboard is installed. So trust me, do that first. After that, I mounted the board with no issues. Then came the GPU. I lined up the PCI connection, seated the card, and locked it down. Super straightforward. Now, I wanted to maximize my CPU cooler clearance, so I loosened the screws on the internal spine and shifted it slightly to give myself some more room. The 77mm clearance is only possible if you decide to go with a 2-slot GPU. With all the main components installed, I put the panels back on, and just like that, the build was done. Now it was time to power everything on, and thankfully it booted up with 0 problems. Everything looked great, everything lit up, but then I started noticing the temps and the noise. Under load, the system was definitely louder than I wanted, and the CPU temps were creeping up higher than I was comfortable with, so I knew I needed to make some cooling adjustments. The first thing I added was a slim 120mm Noctua fan at the bottom of the case. It sits right under the power supply and GPU and helps with airflow across both components. Next, I flipped the power supply so its fan would face the GPU this time around. That little adjustment pulled more air towards the GPU, helping it out a bit more with the temps. After those changes, my GPU temps dropped noticeably. But then I looked back at my CPU and yeah, it was still running hot. I wanted to find the biggest, most effective cooler that could actually fit inside the Terra, and that's when I found the Noctua NHL12S. When I saw a ton of posts and reviews showing that the 12S could bring CPU temps by as much as 10 degrees, in an ITX build, that's a massive improvement. When it arrived, I realized the installation was going to be a bit tricky. The cooler only fits in one very specific orientation with my motherboard. And if you decide to do this cooler, make sure to get the smallest RAM kit you can find because I'm barely making it. This is probably why Noctua recommends the Ghost Edition. It's just more flexible and you have a lot more room to play with. Once I had it installed, the difference was immediate. Before, when playing Cyberpunk, my CPU would spike to nearly 90 degrees. But then with this new CPU cooler installed, I was seeing temps in the high 70s to low 80s. And those dangerous temp spikes, they're gone. Plus, with better thermals, I was able to lower the fan speed just a bit. That brought down the noise without sacrificing performance. So if you're building in the Fractal Terra and can make it fit, I'd absolutely recommend the NHL12S over the Ghost Edition. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, this build wouldn't even be possible without the RTX Founders Edition. This 2-slot design is honestly revolutionary for ITX builds. It's crazy to think that this much power is packed in such a compact case. I'm seriously happy with how this turned out. For the sake of content, I'm going to build in the Form D T1, as many of you have requested, and the N-Case M2 next. I wanted to see how they compare and which ones really come out on top in terms of performance, thermals, and overall building experience. So if you're curious about that, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. And if you enjoyed the video, drop a like, it really helps me out. With that, peace.